You're sitting in your car at a red light in Pennsylvania. Your legally owned firearm is in the glove box. You don't have a carry permit because you've been told Pennsylvania is gun-friendly. The light turns green, you drive off, and without knowing it, you just committed a crime that could land you in jail. This happens every single day to responsible gun owners across Pennsylvania, and the scary part is, most of them have no idea they're breaking the law until the handcuffs come out. Pennsylvania gun laws are like walking through a minefield wearing a blindfold. One wrong step and boom, you're facing charges. The state doesn't make it hard with complicated paperwork or lengthy processes. No, Pennsylvania makes it hard with invisible tripwires that turn law-abiding citizens into criminals in seconds. Today I'm going to reveal the 7 deadly traps hiding in Pennsylvania gun law that catch thousands of responsible gun owners every year. Let's start with what seems like the easiest part, buying a gun. You walk into a gun store, pick out your firearm, fill out some paperwork, and you're good to go, right? Not so fast. Pennsylvania runs its own background check system called PICS through the state police, not just the federal NICS check. But here's where the first trap springs: private sales. If your buddy wants to sell you his handgun, you can't just meet up in a parking lot and exchange cash for the firearm like you're buying a used lawnmower. Pennsylvania law requires private handgun transfers to go through either a licensed dealer or the sheriff's office. There are exceptions for immediate family members, but mess this up and both buyer and seller could face charges. Rifles and shotguns? Different story under current law. But handguns? That's where Pennsylvania starts showing its teeth. Now comes the biggest trap of all, the one that catches more people than any other. The moment you put that legally purchased firearm in your vehicle, Pennsylvania law completely changes. You can walk down the street open carrying in most of Pennsylvania without any permit if you're legally allowed to own a gun. But the second you sit in your car with that same gun, you've entered dangerous legal territory. Pennsylvania Section 6106 is the monster hiding under your car seat. If you put a handgun anywhere in your vehicle, glove box, under the seat, in a bag, center console, doesn't matter where, and you don't have a license to carry firearms, you could be charged with a crime. People argue about this online all the time. They say things like, "But it wasn't concealed, it was just in my car." Pennsylvania doesn't care. Carrying a firearm in a vehicle without a license is its own separate violation. But wait, it gets worse. Pennsylvania has another trap through the game code about loaded firearms in vehicles. This isn't just for hunters out in the woods, it applies to everyone. If you have a loaded firearm in your vehicle and don't have a carry license, that's potentially another charge. The law does have a specific exception for licensed carriers with loaded pistols or revolvers, but without that license, you're walking on thin ice. Speaking of thin ice, let's talk about Philadelphia. For years, everyone knew the simple rule. Pennsylvania allows open carry except in Philadelphia, but Philadelphia's special restriction under Section 6108 bans carrying firearms on public streets or public property unless you're licensed or covered by specific exceptions.
Gun rights are at the forefront of discussion today.
If you're going to restrict a constitutional right, it has to be consistent with the nation's historical traditions of firearm regulation.
You need to be on the right side of the law because the legal system is complex.
We're covering a bill introduced by a Pennsylvania legislature which would prohibit the carrying of a loaded firearm in a vehicle.
It's your responsibility to stay on the right side of the law. There's a myriad of things that can tie you up legally, financially, put you in jail, or maybe get you in very serious trouble with the police.
First and foremost, basic gun safety does not have to be a threat to the Second Amendment.
The law itself lists exceptions, including certain transport situations, but here's where it gets interesting. In 2025, the Pennsylvania Superior Court dropped a bombshell. In Commonwealth versus Sumter, the court ruled that Philadelphia's special restriction was unconstitutional as applied to unlicensed open carry on equal protection grounds. A month later, they followed up with Commonwealth versus Holden, reinforcing this position. So heading into 2026, Philadelphia's special rule is in legal chaos. What's enforceable depends on whether you're talking open carry versus concealed, your specific situation, and what the courts decide next. The smart move? Don't test the waters in Philadelphia. If you're going to carry there, have your license, know exactly what you're doing, and don't rely on internet legal theories to keep you out of jail.
Currently, it's illegal to carry a loaded firearm in a vehicle without a valid license to carry firearms.
Open carry has historically been regulated. The U.S. Supreme Court has said those types of regulations would be improper.
You guys aren't just firearm enthusiasts, you're ammo-sexuals. We're here. We've got gear. Get used to it.
It's not the gun owner. It's not the pistol permit holders. It's the criminals that are causing the violence and the gun problem.
That seems like guilty until proven innocent. That's not within the lawful jurisdiction of a government.
It is unconstitutional.
Now, Pennsylvania does have something called state preemption, which means cities and counties can't make their own gun laws. Philadelphia tried to challenge this in court in 2024, and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court unanimously shut them down. The idea is you shouldn't need a different rule book every time you cross a city line, but just because cities can't write their own laws doesn't mean you're safe during police encounters. Here's another trap people fall into: traffic stops. Pennsylvania doesn't require you to immediately announce you have a firearm when pulled over, but if an officer lawfully asks and you're carrying with a license, you must produce that license. Can't produce it? The law creates what's called a rebuttable presumption that you're not licensed. Translation: I left it at home turns into handcuffs and court dates. The same applies if you're transporting without a license under one of the exceptions, going to the range, moving between properties, things like that. If asked, you need to provide satisfactory evidence you qualify for that exception.
All right, we've got this breaking news just coming into our newsroom right now.
First of all, it's important that you know the gun and concealed carry laws in your home state and anywhere you plan to carry.
It is also unlawful to carry a loaded pistol, revolver, shotgun, or rifle other than a firearm in any vehicle.
Not every instrument that is bearable will be protected by the Second Amendment.
This is something that actually comes from common law England. The king is sovereign, and the government has to waive that sovereign immunity.
The public is demanding of its public officials that we take action.
No evidence? Big problem. Now let's talk about when you can actually use that firearm for self-defense. Pennsylvania's stand your ground and castle doctrine laws are where people's confidence gets them in trouble. Yes, Pennsylvania allows you to use force when you reasonably believe it's immediately necessary for protection against unlawful force. But deadly force? That's a whole different analysis. Outside your home, whether you have a duty to retreat depends on specific factors. Are you somewhere you have a right to be? Are you engaged in criminal activity? Is the attacker displaying a deadly weapon? Inside your home, the castle doctrine provides stronger protections, especially regarding unlawful entry. But relying on what you think the law says, instead of what it actually says, is a fast track to criminal charges. Here's where intent doesn't matter. Prohibited person status. Most gun owners know about felony convictions, but Pennsylvania has other traps. Protection from abuse orders can require immediate firearm relinquishment with specific documentation requirements. Miss those tight deadlines and you're in violation. Certain misdemeanor domestic violence convictions, that's a federal prohibition. Some drug convictions that people think are no big deal, those can prohibit you too.
How do courts determine whether or not the use of force is objectively reasonable?
With gun control being implemented in a number of states, even where least expected, this is not a bill that PA gun owners should ignore.
The fact that you have a concealed carry permit does not mean you get to go anywhere you want with your firearm.
Taken a few decades and a lot of work and a lot of talking, but it has finally bubbled up and people have finally taken notice at the highest levels of American law.
We know that these laws save lives. We know that they are effective.
And I think it's pretty simple, is that we want to do our due diligence if we're looking to give people gun rights.
But perhaps the strangest Pennsylvania gun law trap is what happens during emergencies. Section 6107 says that during a proclaimed emergency by state or local government, you generally can't carry a firearm on public streets or property unless you're defending life or property from immediate danger. This law has been on the books since 1995 and was actually used during the 2020 emergency declarations. Think about that. During the exact time when civil unrest might make people want to carry for protection, the law says they can't unless they have a license or fit specific exceptions. Licensed carriers are exempt, as are certain law enforcement, military, and other specific categories. But for everyone else, the emergency declaration becomes a gun rights off switch. So where is Pennsylvania heading? The state legislature is a battlefield. On one side, there are pushes for constitutional carry and expanded rights. On the other, there are attempts at universal background checks, ghost gun bans, and red flag laws. Just recently, the Pennsylvania House passed a bill to expand background checks to all firearm sales, eliminating the private long gun exemption. The same day, they narrowly defeated red flag legislation and additional ghost gun restrictions.
There are some states and commonwealths we're talking about where this will be a felony if you end up carrying a gun without the proper permit.
Members of the Senate are focusing on gun rights in the wake of the Supreme Court's Bruin decision.
50 states, all of our territories, everything that's going on, there is no uniform firearm laws across this country.
Even if you are innocent, your words can still be twisted and taken out of context.
The weapons unto themselves, they're not the problem. The problem is, what are you doing with the weapons?
Our citizens want gun safety, want firearm safety, want community safety.
The Superior Court decisions on Philadelphia's carry restrictions are still working through the system. What happens next in the courts will shape gun rights in Pennsylvania for years to come. Look, if you're watching this, you're probably not looking for trouble. You just want to exercise your rights, protect your family, and stay on the right side of the law. But Pennsylvania makes that harder than it should be. The invisible lines between legal and illegal shift based on whether you're in a car, what city you're in, whether there's an emergency declaration, and dozens of other factors. The key to navigating Pennsylvania gun law isn't knowing every statute by heart. It's understanding where the traps are hidden and avoiding them. Get your license to carry. It solves most vehicle and Philadelphia issues. Know your prohibited person status. Understand exactly what the law says about self-defense, not what you think it says. And always remember that in Pennsylvania, the moment you think you've got it figured out is probably the moment you're about to step on a landmine. Stay informed, stay legal, and most importantly, stay free. That's it for today, folks. See you in the next video.